So welcome to everyone. Thanks for joining us on this call. We estimate about 2 hours, but let's see how we go. We're all here except Mike Whiting, who might join us, I guess. And I can say in that respect that although we've had a communication with regard to the appointments of the two local authority representatives, and I guess myself as holdover chairman, it's not been confirmed in writing yet, and therefore for the moment we have to register as before that those appointments are pending, and we hope that something will happen in the very near future to resolve that. So moving on then with the formal part of the agenda, are there any disclosures that we need to particularly register this time? If not, we can move to the minutes which have been circulated. And can I have your agreement that those can be signed and lodged? No points on the minutes. And the action points, Ian, any particular comment?
Not that are not covered in the papers, Michael. Yeah. Conscious though that the 0204, the action about the Ebbsfleet Green School was covered in part 1. So I've given a slightly fuller response to that situation in my part 2 paper. But as the action update here suggests, despite the representations that we made, we're not aware that of any change in the proposal. So we understand that the school is still intending to open on a temporary basis at the Bly school in Strood.
Yeah. Very good. We note that. And so when you're ready, Ian, we'll go into your part 1 report, please.
Thank you, Michael. Just waiting for that to load. So just to cover off some of the COVID-19 issue, we obviously spent quite a lot of time reporting on this last month. In terms of our situation as an organisation, not a huge amount has changed in the intervening period. We are still all working from home, as you can probably imagine. We've started to look at how we might reoccupy the observatory should we get the go-ahead. Of course, what we don't know is what the general guidance for employers would be at that time. The work we have done, not surprisingly, suggests that the capacity that we'd be able to operate at would be well down on the sort of normal capacity, potentially somewhere between 5 and 10 people, and maybe not all necessary at the same time. So if the current social distancing rules were to apply, we would be down to sort of only 5 or 6 people being able to be there at any one time. But as I say, at the moment we're not. We are all still working from home, and the office has not yet reopened. And we'll obviously monitor that as we go through. We have been talking to the house builders and developers across the Garden City over the last month or so. They are pretty much all now back working. They are generally taking it pretty cautiously and slowly because it's very, very different set of circumstances for them to be undertaking construction activity. And as I say, most of them were focusing on lots of risk assessments and working out different protocols for being on site. So, but activity is back underway, and they are obviously applying all of the required guidance for doing that. In terms of our sites, Springhead Bridge is back working again, maintaining all the required social distancing, but the electricity site UKN haven't yet been able to restart work. At 2.1, I mentioned there that the Secretary of State we had agreed the local authority representatives, but as Michael has said, we haven't had formal confirmation back yet, and the letters haven't actually, as we understand it, been issued yet. So we still await that formal confirmation of that. In terms of priorities, very good progress being made on Ebbsfleet Central in terms of the very significant procurement processes we've been operating. We've pretty much concluded all of that. We are still in a couple of standstill periods before formal announcements can be made. Grove Road, we continue to reach agreement with land owners down there on our land assembly, and we've got a couple of sites being reported in more detail in part 2. My only other final thing is to apologise for the spelling mistake at 2.5, where I've referenced you all as bards as opposed to the board, but apologies for that.
Yeah. So just one question from me, I think, Ian. The comment about builders re-establishing their programme, I think there was a rider to that, which is, was it only to finish off or was it on new build? What's your understanding there?
I think given how slowly and cautiously they're going at the moment anyway, and the number of people they're able to accommodate on site is obviously significantly reduced, definitely I think they are focusing on finishing off those units that were most advanced, as opposed to commencing new ones. I suspect that's a function of both the practicalities of starting up a significant amount of construction activity, but also I think they will be keeping an eye out on the development of the market. They've generally reported in quite a positive nature. They have still been taking reservations throughout the last couple of months, so they were generally optimistic. But I think that combination of wanting to be quite cautious about the construction activity and keeping an eye on the market is meaning that they're going to finish off the units that they just had to sort of leave quite suddenly back in the middle of March anyway. So I think that's their focus.
Thank you. Other questions from members of the board, please?
Hi, it's Louise. Just following on from Michael, have they given any sort of tentative forward projection on new build at all? Have they given you a percentage? And I guess have you got different responses from different house builders?
So we haven't yet posed the question of them as to what they think their completion rates are going to be, say, for this year. I probably wanted to give them a few extra weeks just to settle down into a pattern of working that maybe would allow them to estimate that a little bit. You definitely get the feeling that obviously this is all very new for them. They were going to be, say, taking it fairly cautiously. Most of them, it's a fairly consistent message, but one of the house builders, for example, they were saying in terms of a delivery rate, you're probably going to be at 20 to 25% of the normal rate, just by virtue of the amount of people you can have in a building at one time to maintain social distancing. So just on that basis alone, it's going to take considerably longer to finish a house under these circumstances than it would do previously. So I think in the next month or so, when I have sort of follow-up discussions with them, Louise, we can start to get a feel for maybe what their programming is, but we haven't got that at the moment.
Jeremy, next.
Thank you very much indeed. Does anyone have any information about whether the Berkeley Homes factory is getting on? And because it couldn't have been very far away from completion before all this began.
I don't have any detail, Jeremy. They were definitely in fit out, and I think the last messages I saw were that they were bringing some of the sort of heavy equipment, the heavy machinery. I don't know whether they've been able to carry on the fit out in the last couple of months, but we could try and find out. I don't know if Mark from the planning side has got any other information on that.
Yeah, so we'd heard that they are still on site fitting out the insides of the building. They had originally planned to open in June, which won't be possible, and I don't think that they've established a new date to open the factory. So they are doing some work inside as far as we understand, but they are tantalisingly close to finishing.
Thank you.
Very good. Other points, please? No, we're all satisfied, Ian. Thank you very much. And so let's move on to Ebbsfleet Living then. Who's going to speak to that?
Should be Kevin, if Kevin's on the line.
Yeah, I'm on the line. I think you said we weren't going to do an introduction, but is there any questions anyone wants to ask for the report, assuming everyone's read it?
Exactly. Any questions for Kevin, please?
Hi, could I ask a question?
Yeah.
I just sort of noticed that in the difficult times that we've had, it's caused or created a sense in communities of helping each other out and having sort of a lot of virtual connection. And I was really just reading your report and pondering sort of the extent to which has that created a further divide between the old and the new communities, or do you feel that it's brought the existing communities and new communities closer together?
I mean, in terms of the activities that have been going online virtually, Louise, they've been available obviously to new residents and existing residents. And our understanding is that both have been taking that up. We have kind of done a fresh push to both communities to say if there's any ideas that they want to deliver activity virtually from the Community Investment Fund or the Creative Ideas Fund. And we've had a couple of examples of that coming forward. So hopefully by next month, we'll be able to report some of the things that are coming through that. We've been doing some touching basing with some of the contacts we know in the community, and they've been saying, you know, it's been a very positive spirit coming through, but you know, that's something that's happening everywhere. And I think it's, you know, it's quite a new community, so there was a modest number of things that could go online, but they have done so, and people are still getting involved, which is very positive. We are proposing in the next couple of weeks to do a consultation with local people as well to ask them what's worked and what hasn't worked at the minute, living in Ebbsfleet, and how we can maybe improve that for the future as well.
Thank you. So Jeremy next.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, Kevin and I spoke. It's a bit of a shame, really, that the community board wasn't a little more mature. I think if it had been 6 months or 8 months more mature, we could actually have used it as one of the vehicles for communicating through this crisis. But I think we took a probably the right decision that actually, having just had one meeting, it wasn't the time to use it as a vehicle. So what I think has happened is that probably if there is a divide, it's probably between Dartford and Gravesham, because I think the councils have moved in to cover in terms of crisis offer and management. I think that's what it is, and I think both councils are working along very similar lines, and I think there's been a very strong community output. But I don't. In answer to your first question, I don't think there's any sense that there is a them and an us or a new and an old in this. My sense is that the communities are responding to each other, and actually, because they're very, very neighbourly, it's micro helping. They're not actually coming into that much contact with each other. But I think I don't sense there's any sense of injustice or feeling that there's a discord between the communities.
Thank you.
Do you think I could ask a question, Michael?
Yes.
David. Yeah. And I suppose the thing I'm interested in particularly is a potential recovery plan. Most organisations now are beginning to think about recovery and what the next sort of 6 to 12 months holds. So I'm wondering whether, when your report next comes back, Kevin, we could see a forward look which says, on the basis of the experience we've had in the previous 6 months and under the knowledge that social distancing is going to be in existence for another 9, 12, 18 months, what are the sort of things that we're going to plan or begin to sort of ideas into the community that might get this thing restarted, or make sure that we've got activities that sort of match the circumstances in which we're in. So I'd be quite interested in seeing more of a forward look next time, I think, rather than sort of a list of what activities have sort of taken place in the previous month or 2 months.
Yeah, no, happy to do that, David.
I mean, if that's what you do, Michael, you know.
Can I say something? Sorry, it's Sandra here. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to say what David's just said about a recovery plan. Sorry, I've got for some and the strand around isolation, people who may find they're beginning to lose their jobs and the support that we might need to put in place that will across the estate. But I think if we're going to start doing questionnaires and so, it needs to be a kind of post-COVID type. What would you like to see? What would you do differently, really?
Yeah.
Did that through all right?
Chairman, it's Bob here. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Bob?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Can I just, it's not really a question for Kevin, really, but as part of this debate we're just having now, it would be useful to understand the impact of the current restrictions as well in terms of claimants for unemployment or benefits as well, if that's broken down into local authority areas, as part of planning this recovery period over the next 6 to 12 months, just to understand what the impact has been in our area. So any information we can gather from partners would be very useful as part of that process.
Thanks. Kevin, just to complete the set, so you can reply if necessary to all of them. The upskilling section, is it intended that there will be professionals, if you like, brought in on that subject, or is that something you're going to handle within your team?
Yes, Michael, you may recall when we did the report to board earlier in the year on economy, we did propose that there would be some additional resource brought into that. Obviously, we can't fill that resource at the minute until we have more confidence in our future budgets. So we're going to incorporate that into my team at the minute. And we'll be sort of taking some smaller actions that we can in relation to that. For example, we did do a bid to the CITB for a resource and a programme just before the COVID kicked in, but that's had to be pulled because the CITB's pulled all the money at the minute. But there is quite a lot of interest from the housing associations and some of our contractor partners like Balfour Beatty, Clarion and others to work with us to try and come up with an approach to inclusive growth and particularly employment and skills. So I think there'll be more interest than ever moving forward to try and maybe mobilise that quicker than we thought.
Thank you. And on the other points, any comment?
Very valid points. Most of them are things I need to pick up for the next presentation. And it's very much, as Sandra had said, we're really asking people what they feel would benefit them post-COVID. So it is very much about thinking what we're learning from this process and how we can actually respond to it. So in some respects, it's a very valuable learning exercise for us to kind of make sure we respond to that in the future planning of the Garden City.
Thank you very much. I think we've probably finished the set of questions on living. So we can move on to communications report, which is very self-explanatory. Thank you, Mark. Can I just invite board members, if they have any comments, to raise them now, please? Everyone's happy. So we'll move on to planning and just take the part one report, please, Mark. Anything to add? No, we're in good shape as far as I can see. Yes, please, fire away.
Sorry, since we last met, we had our first virtual plan, and I'd like to say thank you to everyone who participated in that and ensure that that went smoothly. The staff did a great job, number of lessons to learn, but we did, I know I was at the helm of it, but we, as a team, we did a good job, so thank you.
Could John Burden now come in, please?
Yeah, good morning, thank you. My question is, I appreciate the board members may have been agreed and appointed, albeit we're waiting for the paperwork, but has the GBC Planning Committee member, Lauren Sullivan, been agreed as well yet? Do we know that?
Michael, it's Ian. As far as we know, John, it's the same situation, that within the ministry there seems to be an agreement. but the sort of formal cross-government confirmation hasn't been received yet. So we think that they've been dealt with together.
Yeah. Other points on planning from anyone? No, everyone's happy on that. And so we move to finance, budget, and then this insurance item, which we may just need to pick up on. So first of all, Gerard, anything that you need to add to your report, please?
No, nothing further to add, Chairman. Thank you.
And on insurance then, how much of a departure will this be, or is it a very minor item?
We're seeking clarification on what level of insurance we need to take. The amount that we've provided for at the moment has been sufficient. However, we are just confirming whether we've got sufficient insurance cover or whether we need to extend what we've currently acquired.
And so that will relate to the sort of risks that you would expect a public body to wish to insure against. So it's probably not the sort of broadest possible range of items, because some of them we just self-insure, don't we?
Under central government rules, yes, there is this self-insure principle. Now we're being reclassified by the ONS to local government. There is this requirement for us to insure. So we're just making sure we have got.
I do understand that, but what I'm really thinking about is that there's quite a lot of categories of insurance that you wouldn't even think of going near. So in other words, this could be just interruption type insurance or public liability type insurance. In other words, just the basics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right, Michael. It's Ian here. We've been having a discussion this week, for example, about professional indemnity insurance.
Yes.
We had a very large quote from the brokers to cover that. But when we started looking at it, we think, well, we're not, we questioned whether we were providing advice and services that you would need to be covered. So we're actually just getting a little bit of formal advice on that as to whether the sorts of activities that we engage with would require that sort of insurance. I'm not sure that it does. So we're looking, as you say, Michael, there's lots of different forms of insurance which are not going to apply to us. Yeah. So it'll be some of the basic ones, but yeah, there's some around the edge where we're just checking them out.
Okay, it's not necessarily a board matter, but I just thought I'd flag up that from my other experience, these things can be as long as a piece of string, and so yeah, it needs a bit of focus. So John Burden wants to come in on this, is that right?
I think John might have his hand up from before.
My apologies, it was hand up from before. I didn't realise I had to turn it down as well, so it's my fault.
Yeah,
now off.
It's all right. We learn.
Say something, Michael.
If there's nothing else on finance, and I can't see any other hands up,
I think David's trying to.
Yeah.
I think David's trying to come in.
I don't have the ability to use the hands up thing, Michael, I'm afraid. Only that I'd like to say that if the forecast outturn for capital and expenditure is as shown in the paragraph 12 we have here, then I think we should, as a board, just note in this public bit of the meeting that is a very good outcome for the year, both on capital and expenditure, and certainly from a audit point of view and from the meeting we had recently, the professionalism and the quality of those draft numbers was very high despite the circumstances in which we find ourselves. So I wonder whether we can just register here, because it is noted as a potential forecast outturn in this report, and I think as this is part of the public meeting, it might just be worth the board recognising the effort that's gone into getting those numbers out within the timescales available.
Well said. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good. We now need to take the responses to questions from members of the public which have been circulated, and unless there's any comment, those will go on the website as usual. And we can now close part 1 of our meeting and have a short pause before we move on to part 2.